The topic this afternoon is the Assumption of the Blessed Mother. Yesterday in the Catholic Church, we celebrated this feast, and I thought it only appropriate the day after to talk about this feast. Your Excellency, if you would begin by please explaining the Feast of the Assumption and its purpose.
Okay, I might have to get into a few definitions here because, as the philosopher in me knows, we have to come to an understanding of terms. But first of all, Assumption means that Mary was taken body and soul into heaven. She was assumed. And I say that in distinction from the ascension of Christ, who ascended into heaven by his own power, his own authority. The Blessed Mother was taken up by a power that was not her own. It is a divine power. So it was God who lifted the Blessed Mother up out of this earth when her earthly life had finished its course or run its course. God saw fit that her body should not suffer corruption, and so she was taken into heaven, body and soul, and crowned as Queen of Heaven. This is a dogma of the Church, teaching of the Church, if you will. Dogma means teaching. And so it is a defined dogma. Pope Pius XII on November 1st, 1950, declared it a dogma of the Church. And of course, it wasn't a new teaching. And as with all these things, we're often accused of inventing dogmas or coming up with new dogmas, new teachings. And that is not really the case at all, because we can trace back and show that right from the beginning there was belief in the Assumption, and it just was not clearly defined at that time. But it existed within the Church, and that's basically what the definition is suggesting to us when the Church comes out with the definition of a dogma. This has been teaching either explicitly or implicitly within the Catholic Church right from the beginning. Okay, so basically the dogma says at the end of Mary's life here on earth, she was taken body and soul into heaven without any form of corruption. So her body had no corruption in it. And of course, there's that debate. There's a long tradition that Mary died and resurrected and suffered all the things that Christ did. But I see in the definition perhaps something a little bit different, that she did not suffer the least corruption. And I consider death to be a corruption of the body when the soul leaves the body. I see it may not be decay, but it is a corruption because the body was made to be with the soul, and you separate the two in death. So I understand by the words at the end of Mary's earthly life, that is when God saw fit that her presence here on earth was no longer needed. He took her to heaven, alive, body and soul, and of course that's part of the definition, that she is alive in heaven, body and soul, just as Christ is, who ascended into heaven. And of course the purpose of every teaching of Christ, therefore every teaching of the Church, every doctrine of the Church, is the greater honor and glory of God and the salvation of souls. And so I can say this is, again, the same purpose of this dogma, of this feast in the Church that we celebrated yesterday, is for the greater honor and glory of God and the salvation of souls. And so we cannot really honor God completely without first honoring his mother. How can we say that we love God whom we do not see if we cannot love our brother whom we do see? And so God has created us in such a manner that we are to love one another. And of course, our love for God must supersede all of that. But they really are reciprocal, one feeding upon the other. I cannot really love my brother, truly love him, unless I truly love God. And I can't say that I love God if I hate my neighbor, hate my brother, because the two are really one commandment. And so our Lord, our Holy Mother, the Church, is drawing our attention, our love, to the Blessed Mother, and therefore to himself. And So I see that really as the emphasis, and then, of course, the dogma finalizes any debate, any discussion on whether the Blessed Mother is truly in heaven or not. And, of course, I found it interesting that there are no first-class relics or any pieces of bone of the Blessed Mother, of her body, nor we can find her body incorrupt as we find many of the saints. Her body, as the Church has told us, is in heaven, sitting on the throne next to her Son, as Queen of Heaven and Earth.